What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Michael and welcome to FudgeMuppet. Today I'm very excited to share my Fallout 76 West Virginia experience with you, which I recently came back to Sydney from. In particular, I'm going to be exploring how VATS works in an online multiplayer game and just how functional it is to use and how it differs from the previous single-player Fallout games. Now, just a heads up, due to the recording setup, at times there were some frame rate drops. Also, this video is made before the beta is even out, so technically things are still incomplete, are subject to change, and should run smoother upon release. So if you didn't already know, VATS stands for the Vault-Tec Assisted Targeting System, and it's more or less a mechanic used to queue attacks, be they melee or ranged, throughout the Fallout series. It was partly inspired by Fallout 1 and 2, in the sense that these games used a turn-based combat system. What VATS does is allow you to target specific body parts with a chance to hit, select a bunch of attacks based on how many you can fit in, dependent on how many action points you have, and then let it all loose in quite a cinematic fashion. Now, in Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, VATS froze the game entirely. The world around you paused and you could very calmly and clinically line up a bunch of precision point shots, be it to the head, the right leg, the left arm, torso, wherever, and then release it on your foes. Hopefully your chance to hit was good and you nailed each and every shot. In Fallout 4, VATS changed the game by actually not freezing time completely. Time was slowed down, but enemies still moved, and as a result, the chance to hit would change. For example, if an enemy slowly moved behind cover, you weren't going to hit them by the time you released your shot. This meant you couldn't just use VATS to pause the game, think forever, and then pull off some life-saving moves. And to be honest, I think it's kind of nicer that way. I liked Fallout New Vegas more than any other Fallout game, but I liked VATS in Fallout 4 a lot. It just felt like you weren't some overpowered god and you still had to think fast and to make decisions when it came to VATS mayhem. But now, Fallout 76 has taken this to a whole new level. Obviously, we can't pause the game entirely because it's online, and obviously we can't slow down time either because that simply wouldn't be fair for other players. So in Fallout 76, as you may have heard, VATS is in real time. So how exactly does this work? Well, if you've been paying close attention to the video so far, you'd have a pretty good idea just from watching. Real-time VATS feels very different to what we're used to, and at first I found it to be a really strange mechanic. However, once I got used to it, I actually really liked it, and it's definitely something that I'm happy they included in this online game as opposed to scrapping it altogether. So if you had to think faster in Fallout 4, in Fallout 76 you have to think really fast. Having an enemy charge you in real time and needing to select shots in VATS can prove quite the challenge, and while I only had 3 hours to play the game, I picked Concentrated Fire as my first perk card, as this actually gives you the ability to target limbs, and each shot on the same body part gains additional accuracy and damage. Also, I will say, while I liked the way that VATS was included in this online game, if there is a Fallout 5, I do hope they go back to the slowed time system of Fallout 4. So the way it works in Fallout 76 is you press VATS, and then you just select the limb and dish out each shot individually. So this is also different because you're not standing there loading shots into a queue. You're actually firing your gun in real time as you want each shot to be fired. You also don't have to aim at all. So you may have noticed in the video, sometimes I'm not even pointing my gun at the enemy directly because they run off to the left or right after I've activated VATS, but if they're close and the chance to hit is like, say, 90%, then when I fire my bullet, it will actually still hit them, and my gun will kind of trace their direction. I found this a little bit janky looking, but I still enjoyed it. So while everything around you is in full real time, you actually can't spin your gun in real time, so it's like your panning movement is in slow motion. The best way for me to explain it is it's like you're playing with super low sensitivity, but this ends up not mattering because your bullets will still go towards the enemy and hit them based on the chance to hit at the time you fire the trigger or use your melee attack, and your gun does end up kind of tracing the enemy, especially as they get closer and you're targeting specific body parts. It almost feels like using an aimbot at close range, and you may not think you need anything like an aimbot so close, but especially in PvP when enemies try to strafe and spin around you, it really helps to have your gun kind of follow their movement as you carelessly let loose shots, as you'll see I did in the footage. It's very effective. In fact, and keep in mind I only got to play for 3 hours and had low-level perks and low-level gear, I'd go as far as saying that VATS felt really overpowered at close range when it came to PvP. I ended up taking down many people who were just shooting me normally close up, but missing as we're both strafing around, but all my shots hit them as they strafed because my chance to hit was just so damn high due to the close range. Now, because this is an early build of the game and we're not even even in the beta, Bethesda might decide to change this. But when I played the game, that's how VATS felt for me. Another very interesting VATS mechanic that many people at the Fallout 76 event might have missed is that trying to use VATS outside of combat actually takes off a little chunk of action points. So remember in previous Fallout games, if you were out in the wasteland, you could just spam the VATS button when there was no one around, and you just keep pressing that button until it detected some unseen enemy for you, thereby alerting you to its presence. Well, if you try to just keep clicking VATS as you roam the wilderness in Fallout 76, you'll actually run out of AP pretty fast. And I definitely agree with this decision for an online game. We don't want VATS players just being able to detect anyone and everything super easily without incurring some kind of cost, especially in PvP if you're trying to use stealth. You don't want them to be able to see you. You don't want them to be able to try and detect you an unlimited amount of times. And do check out our video explaining stealth mechanics, because I asked a lot of questions about stealth to many developers and got some pretty solid information on that topic. So when it came to gunplay, VATS was a fun mechanic, but because I was low level and had a pistol most of the time, I tended to just spam it at close range and actually shot through my sights at medium to long distance, as otherwise the VATS chance to hit was just too low. Obviously later in the game, when you've got accurate rifles, a higher perception stat which affects your chance to hit in VATS, and better VATS perks, I can imagine that long range VATS will be effective and a serious game changer. So obviously if you want to make a good VATS character, the agility stat should be invested in, so you increase the amount of action points you get to use in VATS, and increase the perception stat too to improve the accuracy of it so you land more hits. Now when it comes to melee, I can't say I have too much experience of VATS use with it, so I can't really show you footage as I only have my own, but what I can say is that the UFC World Champion Rob Whittaker, who came along with myself and the Australian crew, did use VATS with melee and he was killing it. Fittingly, he put all his special points into strength and was just going around destroying everyone and everything super easily. Now, what I saw from VATS with melee with my own eyes is that you actually dash forward to your opponent if you have the chance to hit. Don't get me wrong, it's not some stupidly big teleport like the Blitz perk in Fallout 4 is, but it is a little bit further than if you were just stationary and tried to swing without VATS, so it did appear quite helpful for kind of closing the gap between you and your opponent. Now, in terms of critical hits, the same mechanic is used as Fallout 4, where it isn't chance based, so you don't just randomly have a chance to get a critical hit like in the earlier Fallout games. Instead, as you land hits in VATS mode, you fill up a critical hit meter, which fills up faster the higher your luck stat is. Then when you've filled the meter, you can choose to unleash your critical hit, which does more damage. Then you will have to fill up your critical meter again. I'm really hoping for some cool perk cards, like if there was a critical banker one and you could store up multiple crits for a real gunslinger build loadout. Sadly, because VATS was so fast paced, I actually forgot all about critical hits during my brief time with the game. Now watching the footage back, I can see that I completely did fill my critical meter, and I could have pressed Y to unleash it, but I just didn't notice it. With the pacing, it's just like you're in VATS 1 second and then you're not. So I'm really kicking myself over that. But what I'm going to do is wait until I find out what a critical hit looks like from another source, and then I'll pin a comment explaining it. I imagine it will just fire off like a normal real-time VATS shot, but do more damage and be more accurate. I'm not sure it'll have 100% accuracy like in Fallout 4, because that would just be pretty damn OP, and I highly doubt it'll be performed in a cinematic camera fashion, as none of the other VATS shots are, and that would be very disorienting for an online game, and also that kind of slow motion VATS stuff just isn't how Fallout 76 real-time VATS seems to work. And that wraps up this video on how VATS works in Fallout 76, what it looks like, how it works mechanically in terms of special stats and action points, and how it functions in real time. I hope me explaining how it felt during my short time with the game was interesting to you, and if you want more videos where I talk about the mechanics I explored during my time with the game, then definitely subscribe for more Fallout 76. We're going to be covering everything about the game, especially all the perk cards and how to use them to make the ultimate character build loadouts. Thank you all so much for watching. Social media links are in the description. My name is Michael, and I look forward to nerding out with you again very soon.